At 68 years old, I believed I already understood loss. I had lost my husband 12 years earlier, after 41 years of marriage. I had learned how silence sounds when it stretches across an entire house. I had learned how to cook meals meant for two and eat them alone. What I didn't know, what no one warns you about, is that the deepest wounds don't always come from strangers. Sometimes, they come from the child you raised with your own hands. My daughter Clara was 32 when she told me she was getting married. She came over one afternoon in early spring, rain dripping from her coat, eyes bright with excitement. She didn't even sit down. She stood in my kitchen, twisting her engagement ring nervously, and said, "Mom, he proposed." For a moment, I just stared at her. Then I smiled, opened my arms, and hugged her the way I used to when she was small. The same way I hugged her after nightmares. After school failures. After her father's funeral. "I'll make your wedding beautiful," I said. I didn't say it because I was rich. I said it because I was her mother. I lived modestly. My pension was comfortable but not extravagant. I had savings, money I had carefully protected since my husband's death. Money meant for emergencies. For old age. For security. But when Clara started planning, those savings turned into something else. Love. For 18 months, my calendar revolved around wedding appointments. The venue came first, a lakeside estate with white arches and sunset views. Clara said, "This is the one, Mom," and I nodded before asking the price. Then the dress. Hand-stitched. Imported fabric. "Once in a lifetime," she said. I paid. The photographer. The flowers. The invitations. The string quartet. The honeymoon deposit for Italy because she said she had always dreamed of Tuscany. Each month, another transfer. Each month, another receipt. Each month, I told myself the same thing. This is what mothers do. By the end, the total came to just over 42,000 euros. I never once asked for my name to be mentioned. I never once asked for control. I never once asked for thanks. I only wanted to sit in the front row and watch my daughter smile. As the wedding date approached, Clara became distant. "Busy," she said. "Stressed," she said. I didn't take it personally. Weddings are exhausting. I remembered my own. The ceremony was scheduled for October 12th, a Saturday. I had already chosen my dress, navy blue, elegant, nothing flashy. I wanted to blend into the background. On October 11th, the day before the wedding, I was sitting at my kitchen table when my phone chimed. An email. The subject line read, "Final seating plan, please review." I frowned. Please review? I assumed it had been sent to me by mistake. But curiosity nudged me forward. I clicked. The PDF opened slowly. Tables were arranged neatly, each labeled with care. Bride's family. Groom's family. Close friends. I scrolled. At the bride's family table, there were 12 seats. Clara. Her fiancé. His parents. Her cousins. An aunt she hadn't spoken to in years. I scanned the names again. My name wasn't there. My heart began to beat faster. I searched the document, scrolling back and forth, convinced I had missed something. Then, near the bottom of the page, I found it. Table 17, Friends and Colleagues. There I was. Placed between two people I didn't recognize. Far from the front. Far from the family. For a moment, I simply stared at the screen. My first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion. Surely, this was a mistake. So I picked up the phone and called my daughter. She answered quickly, cheerful but distracted. "Hi, Mom. Is everything okay?" I took a breath. I think there might be an error in the seating plan. There was a pause. Not confusion. Not surprise. Just silence. Then she sighed softly and said the words that changed everything. "Mom, we wanted the main tables to look more photogenic. You understand, right? Photogenic." I looked down at my hands, thin now, veined, aged by time and sacrifice. These were the hands that had worked double shifts, wiped tears, held her through sickness, and signed every payment that made that wedding possible. "Yes," I said quietly. "I understand." But I didn't. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the ticking clock in the hallway. I didn't know yet that this seating plan was only the beginning. I didn't know that the worst humiliation hadn't even happened. And I didn't know that soon, even that chair at table 17 would not be mine anymore. The morning of the wedding arrived too quickly. I woke before my alarm, my heart heavy but hopeful. I told myself that maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe there had been a last-minute change. Maybe a seat would be saved beside my daughter after all. I dressed carefully. The navy blue dress I had chosen hung perfectly. Simple. Respectful. I pinned a small silver brooch at the collar, a gift from my husband on our 10th anniversary. I wanted to carry a piece of him with me. I looked in the mirror and whispered, "Today is not about you." The venue was already glowing when I arrived. White fabric draped across wooden arches. Candles lined the pathway. The lake reflected the autumn sky like a painting. Guests laughed, glasses clinked, music floated gently through the air. I stood alone near the entrance, scanning the crowd. Clara was surrounded by bridesmaids, radiant, laughing, her back to me. I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. No one waved. No one came over. Finally, I approached one of the wedding coordinators and asked quietly, "Excuse me, could you tell me where the bride's mother is seated?" She smiled politely and checked her clipboard. "Table 17, she said. I nodded. Table 17. I walked slowly through the reception area, past tables dressed in ivory linen, past flower arrangements I had paid for, past place cards written in elegant calligraphy. The closer I got to the back, the quieter it became. Table 17 sat near a service door. A stack of unused chairs leaned against the wall nearby. I could hear clattering dishes from the kitchen. The view of the ceremony arch was partially blocked by a pillar. I found my name card. It was real. This was not a mistake. I sat down, folding my hands in my lap. The ceremony began. Music swelled. Guests turned toward the aisle. Phones rose into the air. Applause erupted as Clara walked forward in her white dress, the dress I had bought. She looked beautiful. I felt proud. But when she reached the altar, she never looked back. Not once. The vows were exchanged. Tears were wiped. Cheers filled the air. Everyone stood. I stood too. I clapped softly, my chest tight, my eyes burning. When the ceremony ended, the photographer called out for family pictures. "Immediate family to the front, please." People rushed forward. Parents. Siblings. Cousins. I stayed seated, unsure. Then I saw it. A chair placed beside the groom's parents. Empty. Reserved. I waited for someone to wave me over. No one did. The photographer adjusted the lighting. "Okay, everyone smile." The camera clicked. That chair remained empty. I felt something crack inside my chest, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to change me forever. After the photos, guests moved toward the cocktail area. I sat at table 17, watching servers refill glasses at the front tables. Laughter floated in waves. Someone at my table asked how I knew the couple. "I'm the bride's mother," I said quietly. She blinked, surprised. "Oh," she said. "I thought you were a friend." I smiled politely and nodded. During dinner, speeches were made. The groom thanked his parents. Clara thanked her bridesmaids. She thanked everyone who supported us. She did not mention me. Not once. When the cake was cut, people cheered. When the first dance began, couples flooded the floor. I sat still, hands folded, watching my daughter spin in happiness. At some point, she glanced in my direction. For a split second, our eyes met. Then she looked away. I stayed until it felt like staying would erase me completely. I left quietly. No goodbye, no scene. Just a woman slipping out the back door of the wedding she paid for. That night, I didn't cry. I sat at my kitchen table in silence, still wearing my dress. My phone buzzed with notifications. I didn't open them. I went to bed and slept like someone who had finally understood the truth. The next morning, curiosity, or maybe masochism, got the better of me. I opened Instagram. There it was. Photo after photo of smiling faces, perfect lighting, perfect angles. And then I saw it. The family table. 12 people. 11 chairs filled. 1 chair empty. My chair. No caption explained it. No comment questioned it. It was as if I had never existed. That was the moment I realized something important. I had not been forgotten. I had been removed. And once I understood that, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I would never give them another cent. For 3 days after the wedding, no one called me. No apology. No explanation. No message asking if I had arrived home safely. The silence told me everything I needed to know. On the 4th day, my daughter finally reached out. The message was short. Mom, can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Yes. Come over. She arrived that evening with her husband. They sat together on my couch, knees touching, hands clasped, a united front. I noticed how he avoided my eyes. I wanted to say thank you again for everything, Clara began. The wedding was perfect. I nodded. It was, I said. There was a pause. Then I said quietly. I won't be paying for anything else. Her smile flickered. What do you mean? I mean, I said, meeting her eyes, there will be no more money. No reimbursements. No help. No surprises. Her husband finally looked at me. But, you promised, he said. I leaned back in my chair. I promised to make your wedding beautiful, I replied. I did. My promise is fulfilled. Clara's voice sharpened. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm protecting myself. She crossed her arms. It was just a table, Mom. I let that sit between us. Was it? I asked. They exchanged a glance. Then Clara sighed dramatically. You're being emotional. You're tired. Weddings are stressful for everyone. I stood up. I'm not tired, I said. And I'm not confused. I am done. They left shortly after. 2 days later, the calls began. At first, they were subtle. Mom, did you forget to pay the final florist bill? Mom, the venue says there's still an outstanding balance. I didn't answer. Then the tone changed. Mom, this isn't like you. Mom, you seem distant lately. And then came the words that made my stomach turn. Mom, are you feeling okay? I laughed when I heard it. Not because it was funny. But because it was calculated. Clara came over again a week later. Alone this time. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where she once did homework, where I once packed her lunches. She reached across and touched my hand. You've seemed forgetful lately, she said gently. I pulled my hand away. I haven't forgotten anything, I replied. She tilted her head. You forgot to send the payment. I stood up. Get out, I said. Her eyes hardened. You're making a mistake, she warned. The following week, I received a letter. A doctor's office. An appointment confirmation. Neurological evaluation. I hadn't scheduled it. When I called the clinic, the receptionist hesitated. Yes, your daughter called on your behalf. Something cold spread through my chest. I didn't go. Instead, I called my lawyer. He listened quietly as I explained everything. When I finished, he said one sentence that chilled me more than anything else. They're testing the waters. What waters? I asked. Guardianship, he said. The next few weeks felt unreal. Friends I barely knew called to check in. Neighbors asked strange questions. A woman from social services knocked on my door one afternoon, clipboard in hand. We've received concerns about your well-being, she said. I invited her in. I answered every question calmly. I showed her my bills, my records, my bank statements. I offered her tea. She left an hour later, unconvinced. That evening, I received a message from my son-in-law. This could be easier if you cooperated. I forwarded it to my lawyer. He smiled grimly. They're escalating. I didn't sleep much after that. But fear slowly turned into resolve. I gathered documents. I recorded conversations. I stopped speaking without witnesses. I watched as my daughter transformed before my eyes, from bride to accuser. The final blow came when I received court papers. Petition for guardianship. Claim, early-stage dementia. I sat at the same kitchen table, holding the papers, hands steady. They thought I was weak. They thought I was alone. They were wrong. And they had just started a fight they could not win. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. 6 weeks in which my daughter tried to erase me without ever raising her voice. At first, the tactics were almost polite. She sent messages suggesting helpful doctors. She emailed brochures for assisted living facilities. She left voicemails speaking slowly, carefully, as if I might not understand normal speech. Every message followed the same pattern. Concern wrapped in control. My lawyer instructed me not to respond. Instead, we prepared. I gathered everything. Bank statements showing years of careful saving. Receipts proving I had managed my finances without error. Emails confirming wedding payments made on time. Text messages where Clara thanked me, enthusiastically, recently, clearly. Then we looked at their evidence. It was thin. 2 statements from a friend claiming I had seemed confused. A note from a private clinic saying I had missed an appointment, the one I never scheduled. A handwritten timeline of supposed memory lapses. The handwriting was my daughter's. The witnesses were people I barely knew. One was the groom's coworker's wife. Another was a distant cousin who had not visited me in over 5 years. My lawyer shook his head. They're hoping you'll panic, he said. Or settle. I didn't. The social services visit happened again, this time unannounced. 2 women arrived at my door one Tuesday morning. They were polite, professional, and skeptical. They asked about my daily routine. My finances. My medications. I answered calmly. Then I did something my lawyer suggested. I showed them the seating plan. I showed them the wedding photos. I showed them the empty chair. One of the women stared at the image for a long time. That must have been painful, she said quietly. Yes, I replied. But it was clarifying. They left without making notes. 3 days later, my daughter showed up uninvited. She stood in my doorway, arms crossed. You're embarrassing yourself, she said. I didn't move aside. You're humiliating me, she continued. People are talking. I smiled gently. They talked at my wedding too, I said. I just wasn't invited to hear it. Her face hardened. You're sick, she said. You just don't know it yet. That night, I recorded everything. Every voicemail. Every message. Every threat disguised as care. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was small and brightly lit. My daughter sat on one side, dressed conservatively, holding a folder labeled a medical. Her husband squeezed her hand. Across from them sat me and my lawyer. Calm. Prepared. The judge entered. Proceedings began. Clara spoke first. She cried on cue. She talked about her concerns. About forgetfulness. About how I had abandoned them financially. Then the witnesses spoke. They repeated the same vague phrases. She seemed off. She forgot things. She was confused. When it was our turn, my lawyer stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He asked questions. Simple ones. When was the last time you visited her? What specific incident do you remember? Who paid for the wedding? The answers unraveled. Dates didn't match. Details blurred. Motives surfaced. Then my lawyer presented the evidence. The payments. The thank you messages. The timeline showing the guardianship request filed exactly 1 month after the money stopped. The judge leaned forward. Finally, it was my turn. I stood. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I am not confused, I said. I am hurt. There is a difference. I described the seating plan. The table. The empty chair. I described the Instagram photos. I described the moment I stopped paying. And that, I concluded, is when my memory supposedly failed. The courtroom was silent. The judge removed his glasses. He looked at my daughter for a long time. Then he spoke. This petition is denied. My daughter's face drained of color. The judge continued. And I strongly advise against further attempts of this nature. The gavel fell. It was over. Or so I thought. Because outside the courtroom, my daughter whispered something that would change everything. You'll regret this. Winning in court did not bring peace. It brought consequences. For a few days after the hearing, there was silence. No calls. No messages. No unexpected knocks at the door. I allowed myself to believe that perhaps, finally, it was over. I was wrong. The first sign came from the grocery store. I had lived in that neighborhood for over 30 years. People knew me. They greeted me by name. They asked about my garden. They asked about my husband, even years after his passing. That morning, the cashier avoided my eyes. A woman I recognized from the bakery line whispered to another customer while glancing in my direction. When I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A message from an old family friend. I hope you're okay. Clara told me things are complicated. Complicated. That word followed me everywhere. Within a week, I understood what was happening. My daughter had lost in court, but she had not stopped fighting. She told people I was unstable. That I was paranoid. That the judge didn't understand the full picture. She didn't say dementia anymore. She didn't have to. Doubt did the work for her. Friends stopped calling. Invitations disappeared. Concern turned into distance. One afternoon, I found a handwritten note slipped under my door. Maybe it's time you accepted help. No name. No signature. I sat at my kitchen table holding the paper, feeling the weight of something I had not expected. Loneliness feels different when it is intentional. I called my lawyer. This is defamation, he said calmly. We can fight it. I thought about it. Another court case. More explanations. More proof that I was sane, capable, human. I was tired. That night, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked at flights. I had always loved Portugal. The light. The pace. The way life seemed less rushed there. Years ago, my husband and I had talked about retiring by the sea. The idea settled into me quietly. Not as an escape. As a decision. I didn't tell anyone at first. I sold my car. I closed unnecessary accounts. I began sorting my belongings. I kept only what mattered. Photographs. Letters. A few pieces of jewelry. Everything else went into boxes marked donate. Clara noticed when the house began to empty. She showed up one afternoon, furious. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Downsizing," I said. "You're running away," she accused. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized something painful. She wasn't angry that she had hurt me. She was angry that she no longer controlled me. "I'm choosing peace," I replied. She laughed bitterly. "You think moving will fix this?" "No," I said. "I think staying will destroy me." She leaned closer. "You'll be alone." I smiled. "I already am." 2 weeks later, I posted one final message online. Nothing dramatic. Just a photo of the ocean with a caption. Some chapters end quietly. The comments were mixed. Some wished me well. Some expressed confusion. Some said nothing at all. Clara didn't respond. On the morning I left, I locked the door for the last time and placed the keys on the counter. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe one. At the airport, sitting among strangers, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time since the wedding, my chest felt light. No more watching my words. No more defending my sanity. No more proving my worth. When the plane lifted off, I closed my eyes. I didn't look back. What I didn't know yet, what no one could have predicted, was that my leaving would change everything. Because sometimes, the quietest exit is the loudest statement of all. And sometimes, the people who try to erase you are forced to remember you only when you're gone. Winning in court did not bring peace. It brought consequences. For a few days after the hearing, there was silence. No calls. No messages. No unexpected knocks at the door. I allowed myself to believe that perhaps, finally, it was over. I was wrong. The first sign came from the grocery store. I had lived in that neighborhood for over 30 years. People knew me. They greeted me by name. They asked about my garden. They asked about my husband, even years after his passing. That morning, the cashier avoided my eyes. A woman I recognized from the bakery line whispered to another customer while glancing in my direction. When I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A message from an old family friend. "I hope you're okay. Clara told me things are complicated." Complicated. That word followed me everywhere. Within a week, I understood what was happening. My daughter had lost in court, but she had not stopped fighting. She told people I was unstable. That I was paranoid. That the judge didn't understand the full picture. She didn't say dementia anymore. She didn't have to. Doubt did the work for her. Friends stopped calling. Invitations disappeared. Concern turned into distance. One afternoon, I found a handwritten note slipped under my door. "Maybe it's time you accepted help." No name. No signature. I sat at my kitchen table holding the paper, feeling the weight of something I had not expected. Loneliness feels different when it is intentional. I called my lawyer. "This is defamation," he said calmly. "We can fight it." I thought about it. Another court case. More explanations. More proof that I was sane, capable, human. I was tired. That night, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked at flights. I had always loved Portugal. The light. The pace. The way life seemed less rushed there. Years ago, my husband and I had talked about retiring by the sea. The idea settled into me quietly. Not as an escape. As a decision. I didn't tell anyone at first. I sold my car. I closed unnecessary accounts. I began sorting my belongings. I kept only what mattered. Photographs. Letters. A few pieces of jewelry. Everything else went into boxes marked donate. Clara noticed when the house began to empty. She showed up one afternoon, furious. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Downsizing," I said. "You're running away," she accused. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized something painful. She wasn't angry that she had hurt me. She was angry that she no longer controlled me. "I'm choosing peace," I replied. She laughed bitterly. "You think moving will fix this?" "No," I said. "I think staying will destroy me." She leaned closer. "You'll be alone." I smiled. "I already am." 2 weeks later, I posted one final message online. Nothing dramatic. Just a photo of the ocean with a caption. Some chapters end quietly. The comments were mixed. Some wished me well. Some expressed confusion. Some said nothing at all. Clara didn't respond. On the morning I left, I locked the door for the last time and placed the keys on the counter. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe one. At the airport, sitting among strangers, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time since the wedding, my chest felt light. No more watching my words. No more defending my sanity. No more proving my worth. When the plane lifted off, I closed my eyes. I didn't look back. What I didn't know yet, what no one could have predicted, was that my leaving would change everything. Because sometimes, the quietest exit is the loudest statement of all. And sometimes, the people who try to erase you are forced to remember you only when you're gone. For a long time, nothing happened. No messages. No letters. No indirect attempts to reach me. Life settled into a quiet rhythm, the kind that heals without announcing itself. I began volunteering twice a week at a small community library, organizing donated books and helping tourists find local maps. People there didn't know me as someone's mother, or someone's widow. I was simply Helena. Then, one afternoon, my lawyer called. His voice was careful. "They've been asking about you again," he said. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "Your daughter and her husband." I closed my eyes. "They're not asking for money this time," he continued. "They're asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "Legal ones." Apparently, things had begun to unravel. The wedding expenses they had assumed would always be covered by me had turned into debt. The credit cards they had used freely were now maxed out. And when they tried to secure a loan, something unexpected happened. The guardianship attempt surfaced. Banks ask questions when there's a legal record. Employers ask questions when lawsuits appear. Landlords ask questions when names show up in court databases. They were no longer just a happy couple with beautiful wedding photos. They were a couple who had tried, unsuccessfully, to declare a parent mentally incompetent. And people noticed. A mutual acquaintance contacted my lawyer. "She's telling people her mother is unstable," the woman said, "but the court documents say otherwise." Whispers turned into doubt. Doubt turned into distance. Clara's carefully maintained image began to crack. She stopped posting on social media. She stopped attending family gatherings. She stopped answering certain calls. Control only works in silence. And silence had ended. Then came the message I never expected. An email. From Clara. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. I didn't open it. Instead, I forwarded it to my lawyer. He responded simply. "Your choice." That night, I walked along the shoreline longer than usual. The moon reflected on the water like a quiet witness. I realized something important. Talking wouldn't bring understanding. It would only reopen doors I had closed to survive. So I didn't reply. A week later, the email was followed by another. This one shorter. People are saying things about us. I closed the message without responding. They had lived comfortably with whispers about me. Now they couldn't tolerate whispers about themselves. That was the difference. The final development came quietly. A distant relative, someone neutral, someone observant, sent me a message. I thought you should know. They told everyone you were sick. But now people know the truth. I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. Truth has weight. It settles where lies cannot. Months passed. Spring turned into summer. I planted herbs on my balcony. Basil. Thyme. Rosemary. Simple things that grow best when left undisturbed. One afternoon, while sorting books at the library, a tourist asked me for help writing a postcard. Who should I send it to, he asked. Someone important, I replied. He smiled and began to write. Later that day, I received a final message. Not from Clara. From her husband. We didn't think it would go this far. I stared at the words. I typed one sentence. It went exactly as far as you pushed it. And that was it. No more messages followed. No more attempts. They had finally understood something I learned too late. You cannot erase someone quietly. Eventually, the truth speaks. And when it does not ask permission. Standing on my balcony that evening, I felt complete. Not forgiven. Not reconciled. But whole. Because sometimes, the most powerful ending is not revenge. It is being untouchable. It has been 2 years since the wedding. 2 years since the seating plan. 2 years since the empty chair. Time has softened many things, but it has not erased clarity. And clarity, I have learned, is far more valuable than forgiveness forced too early. I still remember that chair. Not because it was empty, but because it showed me exactly where I stood. For a long time after everything ended, I wondered if I had failed as a mother. That question followed me everywhere. On walks by the sea. In quiet cafes. In moments just before sleep. Where did I go wrong? But one morning, while watching the sunrise over the water, the question finally changed. Why did I believe love had to hurt to be real? No one teaches mothers how to stop giving. We are praised for sacrifice. Celebrated for endurance. Expected to disappear quietly once our usefulness fades. I had confused generosity with obligation. And my daughter had learned that lesson too well. Life in Portugal became something steady, almost ordinary, and that was its greatest gift. I developed routines that belonged only to me. Morning walks. Afternoon reading. Evening conversations with neighbors who never asked about my past. They didn't need to know who I had been to treat me with respect. Sometimes, I saw wedding photos online, not hers, but others. Smiling families. Proud parents. Carefully arranged tables. And instead of pain, I felt distance. Like watching a story I no longer lived inside. Once, at the library, a young woman confided in me. She was planning her wedding and arguing constantly with her mother. She just doesn't understand boundaries, the woman said. I smiled gently. Neither do daughters, I replied. Until one day, they do. She laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. I never heard from Clara again. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement. But I stopped waiting. Waiting keeps you tied to the version of someone who no longer exists. One afternoon, I received a small package in the mail. No return address. Inside was the silver brooch I had worn on the wedding day. The clasp was broken. No note. No message. I held it in my palm for a long time, then placed it in a drawer and closed it gently. Some things don't need interpretation. They just need to be put down. People sometimes ask if I regret stopping the money. The answer is no. I regret not stopping sooner. Because love given out of fear is not love, it is insurance. And insurance always runs out. I learned that dignity is quieter than anger. Stronger than guilt. More permanent than control. If I could speak to the woman I was before that wedding, the one checking the seating plan with trembling hands, I would tell her this. The table is not where you belong. You belong where you are seen. The irony is that the chair they removed me from freed me. It showed me that my worth had been reduced to decoration. To appearance. To what looked good in a photograph. And once I saw that clearly, I was never willing to play that role again. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine that empty chair still sitting there, untouched, unnoticed. A symbol. Not of rejection. But of refusal. Refusal to shrink. Refusal to beg. Refusal to disappear politely. I did not lose my daughter at that wedding. I lost the illusion that love must be unconditional even when it is cruel. And in losing that illusion, I gained myself. Now, when I set tables, for friends, for neighbors, for quiet dinners, I choose who sits close to me. I choose who sees me. And that is a power no one can take away. Not with money. Not with lies. Not with empty chairs. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No grand chandeliers. No drama like in films. Just wood, paper, and tired people who had seen too many families break apart. Clara sat 3 rows ahead of me. She did not turn around. Her husband stared at his phone. His foot tapped nervously. His lawyer whispered something into his ear and patted his arm, like one comforts a child. I sat alone. Not because I had no one, but because I no longer needed witnesses to my truth. The judge entered. Everyone stood. My heart was calm. That surprised me. After everything, the lies, the fake doctor visits, the social worker knocking on my door, the word dementia spoken about me as if I were already disappearing, I felt clear. The judge reviewed the file. Medical reports. Financial statements. Witness testimonies that unraveled under the slightest pressure. When the court-appointed doctor spoke, his voice was firm. She is mentally sound. There is no evidence of cognitive impairment. In fact, she demonstrates above-average executive function for her age. I saw Clara's shoulders stiffen. The judge looked up. This court finds the guardianship petition unfounded and malicious. Malicious. The word echoed in the room. Then came the sentence I will never forget. This appears to be an attempt to control assets, not to protect a parent. The case was dismissed. Not postponed. Not reviewed. Dismissed. The judge warned them about elder abuse laws. About consequences. About shame. Clara finally turned around. Our eyes met. She looked smaller. Younger. Like a child caught in a lie too big to escape. I felt nothing. No triumph. No anger. Just release. They rushed past me after the hearing, avoiding my gaze. Her husband muttered something under his breath. I didn't listen. That chapter was already closing. Within 3 weeks, I sold the apartment. Furniture. Art. Memories packed into labeled boxes. I didn't leave in anger. I left with intention. Portugal welcomed me quietly. No one asked who I was before. No one demanded explanations. I rented a modest apartment overlooking the water. Every morning, the sea reminded me that movement is natural, stagnation is a choice. I changed my phone number. Closed old email accounts. Not out of revenge, but out of hygiene. You don't keep contaminated water once you know it's poisoned. 6 months passed. Then one day, an email slipped through, forwarded by an old acquaintance who didn't know better. Subject line, Mom, please. I didn't open it. Not immediately. I waited a week. Then another. Finally, one quiet afternoon, I read it. It was long. Apologies wrapped in explanations. Explanations dressed as excuses. Fear disguised as regret. She mentioned money. She mentioned stress. She mentioned that she didn't mean it that way. What she never mentioned was the empty chair. Or the lies. Or the word dementia. She wanted access. Not forgiveness. That was when I made my final decision. I replied with 3 sentences. I am safe. I am well. Please do not contact me again. Then I blocked the address. That was my quiet revenge. Not confrontation. Not punishment. Peace. A year later, I heard through distant circles that their marriage was struggling. Debt. Arguments. Tension. I felt no satisfaction. Their life was no longer my responsibility. I spent my days differently now. I volunteered at a women's literacy center. I traveled. I hosted dinners, small ones. 4 people. 6, at most. Every table had space. Every seat was chosen. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the wedding again, but not with pain. With understanding. That wedding was never about love. It was about appearance. And appearances collapse when money disappears. I used to believe mothers were meant to endure everything. Now I know better. Mothers are meant to teach even if the lesson comes late. Especially if it comes late. My victory wasn't in court. It wasn't in exile. It was in the moment I realized that being needed is not the same as being loved. And love that requires your disappearance is not love at all. I was not erased. I walked away. And in doing so, I finally took my seat. At a table where I belonged. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video. Your support helps us share more real stories like this. Subscribe to All Hub for powerful stories, life lessons, and voices that deserve to be heard. Thank you for listening.